We begin today's show in northern Gaza, where Israel's three-week siege has killed over 1,000 Palestinians, most women and children. Gaza health officials say almost 43,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since October 7th, more than 100,000 wounded, though the toll is likely far higher. On Saturday, Israeli forces withdrew from North Gaza's Kamal Adwan Hospital 1 day after raiding it. Health officials say soldiers detained dozens of male medical staffers and some of the patients. This is a nurse describing how Israeli forces detained the hospital's director.
They called Dr. Hussam and asked him to let the male medics out, so he did, and they left. This was also very, very humiliating for them, since they were also without clothes. There were around 70 male nurses that left here. They took them to the external clinic. They started to destroy things, and we were the only nurses in the hospital without the rest of the medical team.
The nurse mentioned Kamal Adwan Hospital's director, Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, a pediatrician. After Israeli forces retreated from the hospital Saturday, he buried his young son, Ibrahim Hussam Abu Safia, who was reportedly killed Friday in an Israeli strike on Jabalia in northern Gaza. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. The doctor praying and mourning his son in his white hospital coat. This comes as the World Health Organization reports the Israeli government has barred 6 medical NGOs from entering Gaza. One of them, the Palestinian American Medical Association, released a statement saying, quote, "We urgently demand the Israeli authorities rescind this decision immediately and urge the U.S. State Department, along with international bodies, to advocate for the immediate reinstatement of these vital medical services, which constitute a fundamental human right protected by international law and the moral fabric of our global community," unquote. For more, we go to Houston, Texas, where we're joined by another head of another organization, one of 6 medical aid groups Israel's banned from entering Gaza. Mosab Nasser is the CEO of FAJR Scientific. He helped lead one of the largest medical missions to Gaza in August of 2023. He was last in Gaza in May during Israel's invasion of Rafah. Nasser also helped renovate parts of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. He is himself originally from Gaza. Thank you so much for being with us as we watch the director of Kamal Adwan, a man you know well, mourn his son, praying at his grave in his white medical coat. Can you talk about who he is and the significance of Kamal Adwan Hospital?
Good morning, Amy. Thank you for having me. Dr. Hussam Abu Safia is a Palestinian hero. He is an amazing, amazing doctor that I have known now maybe for about 4 years. I had several meetings with him when I was in Gaza in 2022, and helped, as I said, renovate the Kamal Adwan Hospital's emergency room and the external clinics, as well as the rehabilitation room for children. Dr. Hussam is the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital, who, by the way, has a foreign passport. He had the choice, like many Palestinians, to leave at the beginning of the war, but he refused. And he stood his ground at the Kamal Adwan Hospital to save lives and save limbs and take care of those children who are left stranded in this carnage. Kamal Adwan Hospital is the only children's hospital in North Gaza. It actually serves about 400,000 or 500,000 people in North Gaza, and there's really no other children's hospital. It has the ICU, It has a large room for premature babies with incubators. And it's a central hospital. If that hospital is not functional, you're talking about thousands of children, again, left without any medical support.
You know, we were just speaking with another Mosab, the poet Mosab Abu Toha, on Friday, who talked about bringing his young children to this hospital and talked about the director being a pediatrician, that it's basically the children's hospital there. Mosab Nasser, if you can describe what has happened there in northern Gaza and what happened to this particular hospital, the Israeli forces raiding it, and this description of the doctors and medical aides being stripped naked in front of the others.
Amy, FAJR Scientific is a humanitarian, apolitical organization. We are actually specialized in surgical, in complex surgeries. We've been operating in Gaza even before the war. We have a team in the north, a local team that actually serves the different hospitals, including the Indonesian hospital. And the news that we get from the team on the ground that Kamal Adwan Hospital was attacked by the Israeli army. I believe more than 30 medical staff members were actually kidnapped by the Israeli army, including Dr. Hossam briefly, and then he was turned back. So he's left maybe with a few, a couple of doctors and a few nurses to take care of over 150 patients at the hospital. The news that we received also that the Israeli army stripped those doctors naked and literally took them into no one knows where. Similar to what happened to our colleagues at Nasser Hospital and Shifa Hospital. I still have many Palestinian colleagues, and I'd like to name a few. Dr. Ghassan Abu Zuhri from Nasser Hospital, who's one of the top surgeons in Gaza, orthopedic surgeons. No one knows his whereabouts until today. Dr. Hani Abu Taima, the head of the surgical department at Nasser Hospital, and many others across Gaza. So the disturbing news that also we have received is that the Israeli army destroyed the oxygen concentrators and tanks at Kamal Adwan Hospital, leaving children in the ICU and in the incubators without oxygen. Many of them actually have died.
Have you been meeting with U.S. government officials? And what have they said? Also, do you know how Dr. Hussam Abu Safia's son died? We heard died in the Israeli airstrike on Jabalia.
Regarding your first question, yes. In fact, I just came back from D.C. This past Thursday, where I met with visited offices of a few congressmen and senators. And before in fact, I've also visited the State Department in this past visit, trying to advocate for lifting the ban or the denial on the humanitarian medical organizations that were actually denied entry by Israel, especially at this time where we are actually needed on the ground the most. And that decision to ban or deny entry to now 6 organizations. In fact, initially there was the initial number that we've heard was 8 organizations. It's mind-boggling, especially with what's happening in North Gaza. Why would you prevent such organizations from coming to provide their services? Especially the healthcare infrastructure is destroyed. Many of the doctors, the local doctors, have been either killed or kidnapped. The patients are left stranded. No one is providing any help with them. And especially we in FAJR Scientific, we're actually specialized in surgical interventions. And many of the injuries that come to the hospitals across Gaza are blast injuries, broken bones, broken skulls, all kinds of multiple degrees of burns. So those patients require immediate attention. And if you don't provide this attention to them, many of them actually will die a slow and painful death because of infections. Regarding Dr. Hussam's son, I really don't know the details surrounding his death. but I was told that he was, he was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Jabalia, as you mentioned.
Finally, I wanted to ask you about a tweet of yours. You're talking about a girl. Maziona is one of the children FAJR has been trying to evacuate out of Gaza for months now. She sustained devastating injuries to her face. Her face was nearly torn off. Surgeons have held the remaining structure together, but she urgently requires a medevac for specialized care and bone surgery. She also still has shrapnel in her neck. She's, of course, in immense pain. Her condition's worsening. The platinum used surgically to rebuild her face is coming out. Doctors have stated she needs surgeries outside Gaza to save her life. Maziona has been denied medical evacuation 4 times. Authorities suggested the medevac could proceed without Maziona's mother accompanying her. However, when her father attempted to take the next steps, Maziona was again denied. Explain her fate right now, where she is.
That is another heartbreaking story, Amy, that I have been personally, as the CEO of the organization, following closely and advocating for Maziona's evacuation for almost 3 months now. I can't tell you how many times I visited the State Department, how many times I talked to congressmen, how many times I've tried to reach to the Israeli authorities to try to evacuate her out of Gaza with no results. Maziona was injured in the face. In her face, a serious injury. I mean, she has a viral video on Instagram and YouTube that you see how, when she was brought to the hospital, how she was bleeding. Initially, we submitted her mother as a companion. The mother was rejected by COGAT, the Israeli authority, effectively. Then we submitted her father's name. Then her father was rejected. Then we submitted the father's aunt, then it was rejected. And then we submitted another aunt of the father, it was rejected. So we are kind of left without any options. I don't know, to the point, actually, I proposed my name to be a companion for Maziona to get her out, and still we have not been able to get her out. In fact, the recent update we got from the local team on the ground that she has potentially an infection, and if this girl is not evacuated as soon as possible, she could die. Maziona is one out of thousands, Amy. In fact, we have 12 children like Maziona with serious injuries, some of them actually with a bullet settled in the head, that we wanted to take out, and we have not been able to take any of them. So far, since May, since the closure of the Rafah border, we were able, generally speaking, only 125 children were evacuated out of Gaza, out of 2,500, if not more, needed an immediate evacuation. So this carnage needs to stop.
Mosab Nasser, I want to thank you for being with us, CEO of FAJR Scientific, one of 6 medical humanitarian organizations Israel's barred from entering Gaza. He's based in Houston and originally from Gaza.